Hi, welcome to my latest video. We're talking about the World Tour Finals. It feels like we haven't had a whole lot of events to cover to get to this point, but unfortunately we're still lacking quite a bit of tournament play right now. But you know what? It is what it is, and we get to enjoy one more tournament before the World Championships. And then, unfortunately, I think I want to say that's the last one for a little while, depending on how the British the British Open unfolds. Still not 100% certain if we're going to see any more events outside of Egypt right away, especially with travel restrictions. So I'm hoping that the World Champs get underway smoothly as planned, but I'm also not completely. I'm not going to take bets on that. Let's just put it like this. But hey, we got an event starting on Tuesday. We can start making predictions, and I think, why not, right? So World Tour Finals is always a bit of a pain. There's a few nuances to it. One is obviously the best of three. If you're playing a normal tournament like they had in Canary Wharf, you can see that best of three. One of the advantages was always to the lesser player, because what it means over the course of a longer match is you have to keep your standards way higher when you're playing a higher ranked player. So it typically means that you have to have much better endurance. You have to be able to keep up with more attacking shots over a longer period of time. Now, in a best of three, that matters less. You don't have to necessarily be the most the highest level athlete. You don't have to be a Joel Macon to beat a player who's 10 places above you. However, it does force you to play a lot better sooner, because you only have maximum 3 games. You can lose very quickly. So, if this was a tournament where you would have players of more disparate ranking, then I would say that, this would have really push the higher end players to beat the lower end ones. Now, because this is the World Tour Finals, it doesn't matter that much. Top 8 are fairly close, depending on which matchups you see. So, for the most part, there will be some benefit to the lower ranked players, but only if they're real grinders. If you remember from the Canary Wharf in 2020, Joel Macon lost to Daryl Selby. And I think the other major upset in that was, I know Gawad lost to, and the name escapes me, but it's the Scottish, Greg Lobban. And you get situations like that where either in the case of Gawad, you're just not firing right, your accuracy isn't there to begin with, and you kind of get overwhelmed too quickly, or in the case of Macon's match, is that you're not proactive enough and you allow a player like Selby, who just will never give up on the ball, to come in. Because the other thing about best of three is that you never feel like you're out of it. When you're down 2-love in a match, well, yeah, that means in order to win a match, you have to win 3. But in best of three, if you're down 1-love, or if you're almost down 2-love, you're going to fight for every last point, because if you can get that second game, then it's just one game. It becomes a bit of a toss-up. So ultimately, I'm not really looking at the fact that it's best of three that closely in this situation. If it was, like I said, a tournament where you had greater range of ranking amongst players, I would consider it then. But for this event, I'm not going to do that. The other real trick about this event, and I was just thinking about it right before this, and how I was actually going to structure this, because one of the problems you get into is once you get past the second round, then the scenarios go nuts. So I actually did bring up, I'm not sure if this will show up, but in any case, I looked up the Wikipedia article on this just to find out how exactly the scoring works. So it's 4 points if you win 2-love, 3 points if you win 2-1, and a loss is 1 game to 2 loss is 1 point, and 0 is 0. Or if you don't win any games. So basically it means that every match is worth 4 points, and then tiebreakers just go to head. So the problem with this is that after the second round, these scenarios can actually play a big psychological impact. You see it, like, if you're already locked to win, then you're definitely not going to, fight too hard in your last match, or subsequently, sometimes the last match ends up being one where, had it been earlier, maybe it would have meant something and the players would have fought more for it, but it ends up being a complete wash. So you got to watch out. So one thing I did with this particular video is I built my spreadsheet to track who I thought would win or lose for the first 2 rounds. And then we're going to go through the 3rd round together with knowing where everybody's at after the 2nd round, because that does sometimes matter. So that's what I'm trying with this video. Haven't obviously done a World Tours Finals before, but this is just more of an attempt to, kind of get into the, I guess you could say psychology, or you could just call it the sort of the game theory when you're dealing with different scenarios, and very specifically how many points players have. I'm trying to keep this video a little bit shorter, so still going to try my best, although I've been failing on my most recent ones, to get through the matchups as quickly as possible. But it's tough. You're talking about the top 8 players current top 8 players in the world, although the rankings are still being influenced by the COVID carryover. But anyway, you still got what I believe are the top 8 players, and you get to really see some really interesting matchups. But I'm just going to try my best to go through this as quickly as possible. So let's just get started. So the first matchup is Mohamed El Shorbagy versus Asal. Now, from what I understand, Asal actually has beaten Mohamed El Shorbagy this year. It was back in either February or March in India. Asal very much is like a young Shorbagy, very aggressive, just bullies along the tee. And I feel like where Mohamed can be weak is he can get sucked into that kind of game. I said this before with Dasuki, where if you play a high pace attacking game, Mohamed sometimes kind of gets into it himself. But I think Mohamed did a better job with Dasuki in the last tournament. The problem is I think Asal is a much better player against someone like Shorbagy, who tends to want to play in straight lines. I still believe Asal has the best backhand length in the game right now. You do not want to get him get into long matches along that back wall. But the thing is, Mohamed El Shorbagy doesn't really have too many twisting shots. So he does, but he doesn't use them as often. He tends to want to play a slow ball game, and which might work against Asal. But I think Asal is a phenom in the sense that he can beat you at fast pace, slow pace, doesn't matter. I actually think, considering this is the first match, I think Asal is going to be hungry. He's young. He's doesn't need as much to get into a tournament. So I'm actually going to take him 2-1. So that means he'll get 3 points and Shorbagy will get 1. Farag versus Momin, easy matchup for Farag. We've seen this so many times. Momin isn't the best in this tournament. I think this is his first round, so he might have. There might be the odd nerve. I don't really think that'll play a huge factor, but Ali Farag is just mops up Tarek Momin's short shots. And what I didn't consider last time was the venue. If this is an outdoor hot environment and it's the summer in Egypt, or I assume it's the summer in Egypt, basically you're just not going to have dead balls as much. It's not going to be a cold court. I'm assuming it's happening outdoors. So I don't see Momin being able to finish off a ball very easily, any player in this event. So I'm going to actually give it to Farag for 4 points to 0, or 2 games to love, however you want to call it. Sorry, I have my points here. Just it makes it more confusing for me now, but it helps when I'm analyzing it later. So Paul Cole versus Fares Dasuki. This has always been a bad matchup for Dasuki. Paul Cole just plays at that medium pace, and Dasuki just always wants to go a little bit faster, increase the pace a bit more. And Dasuki doesn't have a very good hold, and doesn't really slow down the pace of the ball consistently enough to disrupt Paul Cole. So this, to me, is dangerous. The only thing I see about this is Paul Cole's traditionally also not very good at the World Tour Finals, and because it's best of 3, this is where that little factor comes in, where Dasuki can just go. He can just start trying to step up the pace, go and volley everything, because he only has to do it for maximum 3 games. So he might have more, and at this point he'll have plenty of energy. It's been a while since the last tournament. He should be healthy, fit. I think he can get a game here, and these one-off games are going to be huge for the end of the tournament. They're 2-point swings, so the only thing I'd say is Dasuki does have to prevent himself from hitting the tin, but I do see him just trying to cut everything off. It'll get him a game, but it won't get him any more than that. So I'm going to give it to him 3-1. I'm a little less confident on that. I'm almost regretting it, should say 4-off, but whatever. Or 4-0. Marwan versus Joel. This grouping for Marwan with Paul Cole and Joel Makin and Fares Dasuki to some extent is just bread and butter. He knows how to control the pace against all three of these guys. I don't see him really faltering at all in this. I'm taking him to love. He just slows it down, forces Joel to increase the pace on his behalf. And again, Joel Makin can be a grinder too, don't get me wrong. It's just that I don't think that Joel will win a match where it's just a slow pace up and down the wall. I don't think he wants to do that. He has to be the proactive one, which plays into Marwan's game. Muhammad versus Ali. This could be the final, but we're just going to play it on day 2, I guess. I think that this is going to be... Muhammad's going to come after his Assault match. He'll be warm. He'll be a bit more ready. I really think that this is where he can actually step up a bit more. It's not an easy match. This is probably one of the hardest ones to call the whole round robin, but I'm going to give it 2-1. I do think Ali also has a lot more confidence. Put it like this: I think even if Ali knows he's going to lose this, he won't lose his. He probably has a lot of confidence. He won't lose his next match to Assault, and he knows Assault's a good matchup. So, I don't think Ali Farag will go balls to the walls in this one either. Tarek Moment versus Assault. Tarek Moment has beaten Assault and has a pretty good matchup against him. Again, conditions of the court might be interesting here. Assault also is, I think he played him when he was 19, so Assault is definitely developing his own game and getting stronger, understanding his opponents way better. This could easily be a very physical match, even for a 3-gamer. These will, they'll already played the first round. They can be quite difficult, actually, to recover, because these are such intense matches playing against fellow top 8 players. So, not easy. I do give it to Moment still. I think this is kind of the part of the tournament where he needs to click in. Assault's... the other part of this, and I haven't discussed this, is how the refereeing is going to shape up. Definitely Assault has a chip on his shoulder. It's going to be a little tough for the refs not to... I've said it before. They give a lot of strokes to players like Assault where, just on reputation alone. So this will be probably a bit of a messier match. It'll be close again. Very few of these matches are going to be absolute blowouts, but I'll give it to Moment in 3 games. Again, court conditions might be a factor similar to before, but I think Moment will settle down a bit more in this match. Cole versus Marwan. Again, Marwan just knows this matchup perfectly. I was actually a little closer calling this one 2-1, but I have a hard time believing that Marwan's going to deviate at all from a slower pace. He will have no incentive to increase the pace at all unless there's an odd opportunity. And even if he does, he can reset very easily. This tournament is not meant for Paul Cole for whatever reason, but I definitely think that, I have a few reasons. I just, I would argue that if you're a top-end player, you know how to play Paul Cole a bit better. But anyway, I think Marwan's going to take it 2 games to love. Joel versus Fares. Again, I think Fares has a game here. Joel's a bit more attacking, so a higher pace is something that doesn't benefit him as much, although he is a good counterattacker too, and Fares does like to go to the front. If he's not clearing properly, he can definitely get into stroke situations. I don't see Fares doing enough finishing on this in this situation to actually beat Joel, so I'm going to give it to Joel 2-1, but definitely not an easy matchup. Again, I feel bad for Fares. I think he was in a very tough grouping coming to this. And his final match against Marwan says it again, although that one's probably his actual closest match. So where are we after round 2? So basically we're looking at in the A pool, it's really tight. We got Farag basically on top, but only by a point. Got Asal at 4, and then we got Moment and El Sharbagi. The only thing here then is their last matchup. Ali's playing Asal. This is an easy 3. To me, this is an easy 3-love matchup. So I think Farag again is coming this a little fresh because I don't think he's going to go 100% against Asal. So I'm going to give it to him pretty easily. And then in the other match on that pool, we got Muhammad versus Tarek. And this has always been a pretty easy matchup for for Muhammad. And the thing here is, how does he have to actually play? I don't think he even needs to win this outright. So then I'm assuming that, again, Ali's playing after. So again, this is the weird nuance of this. Just that one change in sequence. The fact that Ali gets to play after Muhammad puts a lot more pressure on Muhammad to actually win his match 2-0. So, although it's hard to see here if that actually matters, but I do think that Muhammad will win it. So if he does win it, So I think if he wins it 2-0, the problem is if Ali loses, but Muhammad wins 2-0, then I think he can still make it through. Oh no, okay. So Ali would probably have to win it outright. So this actually makes it pretty simple. I think Muhammad just is going to win it 2-1. So that'll be, I'm just seeing if he needs to win it. Does he need to win it 3-0? You know what? I think he just needs to win. I think he'll just win it 4-0 anyway. I really don't see Tarek at this point in the tournament where they've played 2 matches, hard ones. Muhammad will have his engine going. Tarek might be a little bit behind. Tarek's never had a good game plan against Muhammad, just long matches, and in a best of 3, I don't think that'll work here. So I'm going to give it to him, but that one's not easy to call at all. In fact, you know what I can actually do through the magic of Excel is all fixed. So Paul Cole versus Joel Macon. So even from last year, I thought that Joel Macon took this match so easily. I was wondering, and I think part of it is Joel's one of those players who understands to go at a more medium pace against Paul. At this point in the event too, is we're looking at the way the rankings are. Paul basically, like, whoever wins this ultimately should get through. Now, obviously, the other thing here is that even if, and this is just based on how I predicted it, even if one of these players loses, if this is a 2-1 and then Fares beats Marwan 3-love, the head-to-heads will mean that Paul Cole or Joel Macon will take it. So at this point, Fares is just 100% out of the event. So this is completely for second place in the pool. Marwan's already locked this up, so we'll just call that a 2-1 for Dasuki. I don't think Marwan will worry too much about this match. Joel did have Paul's number here pretty easily. This is going to be a high pressure match. This will be a 3-gamer. I'm going to give it to Joel. I actually think that this will be a repeat of December. As much as Paul Cole's game has evolved, I don't think it's evolved enough to the point that Joel's improvements, he's physically, I think, slightly stronger, and as long as you know how to play Paul, I think it's actually a little bit easier to break him down, whereas with Joel, it's actually harder to break Joel down. He's a bit more attacking, he has a few more finishing shots. I think as soon as you get into a pace that's slightly slower than Paul's, and you force Paul to generate pace, that's what you saw what happened at Alguna. Paul doesn't have an answer for that. So to me, Joel takes this in 3 games. So basically, where that leaves us after round 3, Ali and Muhammad are the top of Group A, and we have Marwan and Joel at the top of Group B. So basically what will happen is there'll be a crossover. So Ali will play the bottom seed here. So Ali will play Joel and Muhammad will play Marwan. Pretty interesting. I'm going to say right now Ali takes Joel pretty decently. Ali's just too good at playing players like Joel. Just if you're not going to be extremely attacking and accurate while attacking, I know that Ali's had his 2 losses to Dasuki. That was very matchup specific, where Dasuki is one of the few players who punishes Ali for being a little bit too, I don't want to say carefree, I think that was a word that popped in my head, but more just not as concerned with a very strict discipline back to the court length. Ali does like to throw in boasts. He does like to chop and change the angle, which against a player like Dasuki, who always is trying to finish the ball, is very dangerous. Joel likes to reset a lot. That's just going to put way too much physical pressure on him. So I give it to Farag in 3 games. And then in Mohammed versus Marwan, Marwan's playing so well. I still think that Mohammed's not playing his best. This is close. Honestly, I think I'm going to give it to Marwan just because I think physically he looks a little bit stronger now. I think in the past you could say it was a little bit closer, but Marwan is looking a little bit physically stronger, a little bit more certain of his game. They've had so many back and forths, but I think that'll be the big edge, is that both players will not be going for as much. They'll play a bit more defensively, and I think Marwan benefits from that. So I'm going to give it to Marwan, and then therefore the final is going to be Ali versus Marwan. That's, you know what, it's all psychological at this point. Marwan's going to have a lot of momentum. Ali didn't play the last event in Laguna, and he's just been in his head. It's such a weird thing to see a player of Ali Farag's, just his class. It's amazing. He looks so calm all the time, but you know, Marwan just completely screws with his head somehow. It could be the refereeing could play a major role in this. I'm not a big fan of most of the refs, so you know, I don't think there's any really good way that Marwan or Ali avoids kind of a fight here. So I'm going to give it to Marwan 3 games to 1. I think that was actually a similar result to the last time they played. Okay, so now we get to move on to the women. So women's draw, I got Nuran playing Sama. Sama to me, she is a step below the rest of the players here. She has made improvements, don't get me wrong. I don't know if Salma's actually beaten, except for maybe Joelle. I'm not 100%, but I don't think she's actually beaten any of the players here, so she is kind of like a distant 8th. Nuran's just way too strong. She did make the final, did lose to Sherbini, but I think she's a clear world number 2 right now, so I give it to her 3 games to love. Camille Serm versus Nourel Sherbini. Sherbini's on fire right now. I think I discussed in my last video, but there is no better player on the volley or on the bounce who is able to sell the short shot. She just makes her opponents move, and Camille Serm's movement is amazing, but no player can handle over a prolonged match. Doesn't matter if it's 3 games. No player can handle going back and forth like crazy, where not only does Noor force you to go front to back, but then when you do hit the loose shot, she's just clinical with her finishing. So this is, to me, Noor to love. Hania versus Sarah Jane Perry. So this is Hania's crown to defend. I don't really see her losing this match, but she has had some difficulties with Sarah Jane Perry. Sarah does attack very well, does have good deception, and can expose. You know, Hania does play at a 1 tempo, so Sarah has a much easier time actually anticipating and getting to Hania's balls versus a player, say, like Sherbini, who holds it more. So I think this is going to be a tighter one, so I'm giving it 3 games or 2 games to 1 to Hania. Joelle versus Amanda Sobi. She is, to me, I think closer, definitely between her and Hania. I think Hania is, I think the rankings for the women are pretty accurate for the top 4, and Amanda's, her physicality is a lot stronger. court conditions may play a factor, but just that I'm hoping that they get the court situation with at least sweat and dust out of the way. But I definitely think Amanda Sobey is the better attacking player. Joelle's lost a step. I actually think she's a bit overranked. Even though she did make this a top 8 here, I think a lot of that was on the back of Nouran her COVID protocol issue at the Black Ball Open. Basically allowed King an easier path to get to the semis, or I think it was the semis there. So, I mean, I'm being a little critical, hypercritical there, but I definitely don't think Joelle, I think, similar to what I was saying with Samahani, I think Joelle's getting to the point where she's a definite step back of the top 6. So anyway, give it to Amanda 2 games to love. Samahani versus Noral Sherbini. Again, Samahani's movement can be so easily exposed by a player like Sherbini, who just forces her opponents to hold and then move. So I just don't see Hani making any inroads this match. It's just going to be way too hard for her to get settled on the ball. 2 love to Noor. Gohar versus Serm. This is a classic matchup. I think Camille is able to absorb a lot of Gohar's shots. This one I was a little tough. Gohar, as long as she's accurate, doesn't really matter much. What I was saying about retrieving the shots, you still have to counter that speed somehow, and I think there's going to be just a little too much going, just simple drives to the back. It's going to set up Gohar way too often, but I don't think this is. I think Noor can get into points where she makes mistakes, and Serm does have the odd game where she just finishes everything. So I'm going to give it to Gohar 2 games to 1, but a little tighter. Maybe I should have called that. That's 50-50 if it's 3 or if it's 2 love or 2-1. Hania versus Amanda. Problem with Amanda's game is that she still, as her physicality is stronger, she can endure into longer matches. Problem is she still has a tendency to wanting to finish the ball. So no matter what, I think that she's going to go to the front, and that's where Hania can counter well. She improved her counter drop and her basic drop shot far better than what it was at the Black Ball Open from this year. So Amanda's going to have to be careful going to the front, and as soon as as soon as a player like Sobey has to be careful about going to the front, that screws up her game. So I give this to Hania. Again, still a few nerves. I think Amanda can definitely. The problem is Hania makes enough mistakes that there is the room for a game to be lost. I do see that happening here, but I still give it to Hania 2 games to 1, and then Sarah Jane Perry versus Joelle King. Sarah Jane Perry's just has too much deception, just going to move Joelle King around. I think one problem with this matchup is that Sarah can go to, I think Sarah doesn't take as many, in this particular matchup, might not take as many finishing opportunities as she should. But I don't know, I just don't feel that King is going to have it in this situation. I think Sarah Jane Perry's going to just kind of dominate it. So again, where are we at after round 2? So right now it's going to be basically Noor has this locked up. So her last match will be against, let me see, I think it's against, where do I have it? Gohar. And Gohar is going to be, so both these players are locked. This is literally, so Camille Serm and Hani's match at this point becomes a nothing match. It doesn't matter who wins or loses, they're not going to make the top. So this one's ridiculously easy to call. Well, I thought Serm was going to beat Hani no matter what, so I'm going to give it to her 2 games to love. Again, doesn't matter. And then Noor is going to beat, again, this match doesn't matter. So could Noor just take, does she really care who she's going to play in the next round? Yes, you want to be the top seed, but the reality is if you're playing the top 2 from the other side, there's no real incentive there, like for a player like her. She knows she can beat any of those other 4 ladies. So the only player she might want to avoid is Hania. So if Hania is the number 1 seed coming out of that side, that gives her incentive. So I would say Noor's playing really well. I think she gives up a game here, just from the fact that as long as she wins, then she's clear to, then she, as long as she wins, however she wins it, she's fine. So she might take it a bit easy here. Not that she should, but Gohar, I don't see Gohar dropping her level or taking it easy. That's the problem. And then on the other half, so in the Group B, we have El Hamami, and it's going to be tight with Amanda Sobey and Sarah Jane Perry. So the problem here is we got Amanda Sobey playing Perry, and because they're tied in points, and Joelle at this point has 0, this is strictly for second place. Because even if whoever wins this, or whoever loses this rather, even if they're at 6 points and Hania loses outright to Joelle, they can't overtake her. So the reality in this one is with Hania and Joelle, Hania has no real pressure on her. I actually see this just because of that, because of the nerves. I think this could actually go 1-3. It's a little weird, but I think that could happen. And then Amanda Sobey versus Sarah Jane Perry. This is tough. I think Sobey hasn't. So the thing with Sarah Jane Perry is she has to keep it to the back. She doesn't want to let Amanda get attacking opportunities. The problem is that Sarah really does like attacking the ball. So I think one way or the other, someone's going to come into this, and I think Amanda's going to hit enough to the back that Sarah's just going to get tempted, hit a couple, either a boast or to kind of go for one of her tricky shots, and that'll increase the pace of the rallies. That'll force her into Amanda's game more. Not easy. Court conditions could play a factor here. Ooh, I'm gonna give it to Amanda. I honestly think that she is, she earned her number 4 in the world right now. She's definitely picked up her physicality, and I think that'll make a big difference in this match. But this will be a 3 gamer. So where are we at? So we'll do the same thing here. We'll just do the old copy paste, and then I'll just revise my formula here. And yes, I know I could just do a replace all, but I'm just being a little lazy. And okay, there we go. We're going to copy the formula. Alrighty, so in Group A, we got Noor and Gohar at the very top. And then on the other side, we got Amanda and Hania. So in this case, because Noor is on top, she will be actually playing Hania. Yeah, so I kind of screwed. It's funny. This is how this tournament it screws you up, because again, Sherbini's thinking she'll be number 1 seed so that she could avoid Hania, but that's not what's going to end up happening here. So Sherbini's going to actually end up playing. Sherbini's going to play Hania, her toughest matchup here, and I definitely see this being. This is going to be tough in a 3 gamer. I think Hania is going to have enough confidence that she's going to increase the pace a bit more, but I definitely think that she will stick in there more than Sherbini is going to like. I'm actually going to call an upset here and say Hamami takes this. This is more just a function of it's going to be tight. The 3 games, the fact that 1 game is going to be huge here. I think that Hamami's just going to retrieve and grind in this one. She is going to absorb all the pressure that Sherbini throws at her. It's going to be an exhausting match for Hamami, but I think she'll pick up enough and counter for enough winners that she'll take this match. But it will be a very difficult 3 gamer. And then Gohar versus Sobey, I give it to Gohar. I think that based on the last match, Gohar she's developed her game enough where she can pick up enough of Sobey's attacking shots, and I think Sobey's just going to get frustrated enough where she will just be the person instigating from the back, trying to boast, trying to hit drop shots. And I think again, Gohar's physicality is such that she's going to pick them up and counter very well. I don't see any real tools that Amanda has except for maybe trying to bring in the law, but then I don't think she has the same level of accuracy at the back that Sherbini has. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to give it 2-love to Gohar. And then in the final, Gohar versus El Hamami. This is a matchup where Gohar just thrives. The problem is Hamami doesn't have a hold like Sherbini does. And because of that, I think it allows Gohar to set up at the back very easily. If Hamami can bring in a little bit of technique where she's able to chip and kind of float the back to the back a bit more, and I think she's capable of it where she can be accurate enough to prevent Gohar from getting a full swing, that gives her a chance. I just don't see that happening enough, especially again a hot court where you just can't be that accurate all the time. Gohar's just going to kill every single opportunity she has. She is an amazing finisher, and I often find that Hamami, because she does try to retrieve a lot more, she can leave a lot more loose balls, which she think, against the average PSA player, she can retrieve their follow-up shot. I don't think she'll be able to do that enough against Gohar. I'm going to give the tournament to Gohar 3-1. I'm pretty confident on Gohar being able to beat Hamami in this situation. Although Hamami's a very confident player herself. When she's in that kind of situation, I think she can step up her level a bit, but I wouldn't say any different to Gohar either. So basically you have, at the end of the day, Gohar taking the women's and Marwan taking the men's, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I definitely hope, again, I'm kind of reiterating what I said at the beginning, I really hope we have a few more events this summer. I know that this is probably going to screw up with a lot of players' training, but it seems like, if it were me, I wouldn't care. I just try to get as many matches as I can. One little tidbit, and obviously, this is something for me to research, but I'm wondering, I don't think anyone's heard anything. I'm curious what's going to happen come this fall or whenever they decide to let the basically that year, the 2019-20 season, where they basically allow points to roll over, if they're going to start letting those bleed out or if they've already done it. PSA doesn't give much news away, so, and obviously there's not much media covering it, so I'm actually kind of curious for the follow-up on this event if they're going to start allowing those points to bleed. And so the reason why I say that is because right now, if you look at the rankings, there are some players, you look at, say, Asal, he's coming into this, there's only been about a year of events, and basically what I should be saying is the whole year of events we've had, Asal's been playing in them. So if he's coming into this as the 8th seed in the event, he should be world number 8, not world number 13. And then you see players like, say, Miguel Angel Rodriguez is not in playing this event. He hasn't done very well. He's probably overranked. So is Diego Elias, ultimately just because of his injury. Gawad is definitely, not going to be hitting his top form anytime soon. And though he did make the final of Manchester, I don't think he's had too many good results. So it's going to be interesting. And that, it applies both to the men's side and the women's side. I think less so on the women's side. I don't know. I think Joelle did have a bad 2019-20 season. And then obviously she's had some decent results here, but I think it's really going to be interesting to see how the men get affected if they start bleeding off those points or how they decide to, because the problem is they can't just keep those points. One reason why I say this is because as soon as you get 50K, 70K events eventually going, that's where the players say top 15 to rank 15 to 35. Those are the events that those players need to kind of start building back into the top ranks. So far, it's been difficult. They just get seeded very, basically in a World Series event, they get seeded low. They pretty much always lose, and it's very difficult for them to build up points for future events. You look at younger players like Faria Mohammed, Supermanium. These players need to have these mid-level events coming back so that they can start building up ranking and then get into the teens and get into the maybe 12 range where they're going to tournaments kind of with buys or able to play players that aren't tight matches and that they're not going to be expected to lose. So just a food for thought. I'm going to look that up probably the next couple of weeks if there was any plans related to that in the original announcement. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this event anyway. Thanks for watching, and have a good night. See you later.